Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with tips on critical listening. And today we're talking about nitpicking. Yes, I'm going to share with you the experience of over 55 years of serious classical music listenertude in order to help you to overcome some, it's a process. Let's put it this way. As we get older and theoretically more mature. Now, let me just say up front, you can listen to anything for any reason and enjoy anything for any purpose, and it doesn't make any difference. I mean, that's your absolute right. But my idea, when I talk about critical listening, is an effort to come to grips with both the mechanics of interpretation and performance, and also understanding works as a whole, overall, the big picture. Because I have found, and this is just my experience that I want to share with you, I've found that as I have aged, the big picture has become more important than smaller details. There will always be details, but if you obsess over them, you risk losing an awful lot of wonderful music, or dismissing it, kind of unfairly, I think. So I want to talk about a few little things, because I've seen in the comments recently, for some reason, especially recently, people who talk about, a single moment of a piece. And if that single moment doesn't go the way they want it to go, then they dismiss the whole performance, hook, line, and sinker. Well, I take a different approach. No one knows how to dismiss a performance better than I do, as I think you'll probably agree. I have no problem doing that at all. And the dismissing is usually the result of an accumulation of moments or aspects that I think should matter, but which are not addressed in the interpretation. And so eventually the accumulation of things that I think go wrong rises to the point where you could just say, screw the whole thing and forget about it. But most of the time, there are wonderful moments or passages or movements or even performances which have certain small details that don't go the way you may ideally prefer them to go. That's why we listen to multiple performances of things, right? Because large works particularly can be so big and so complex that nobody gets everything right. I mean, a Mahler symphony, there's no such thing as a perfect performance of a Mahler symphony or a Beethoven symphony. Haydn almost never gets the kind of attention he deserves over the longest span of time, over multiple works by people who theoretically are comfortable with his style. Composers, their level of genius is usually much greater than the level of genius of the people who are playing them or interpreting them. And that's why we are always listening. That's why we keep on listening. So nitpicking is a real issue. Somebody wrote to me recently, and I don't say this to be critical of the person, because they're absolutely right to like whatever they want. But whether, I think it was the 24th variation of Rachmaninoff's Paganini Rhapsody, if the performance was as fast as Rachmaninoff's own version, because you could only listen to one that was as fast as Rachmaninoff's own version, or he's always looking for one that does that. Well, good. If that's what you like, that's fine. But it also doesn't matter. I mean, in the grand scheme of the entire work, it's not an important point. And to this person's credit, they didn't say that it was. They didn't say that if I can't hear it this way, then I can't stand the whole performance. They just said, this is something I look for. And that's fine. Look for whatever you want, but don't overrate it. I mean, sticking with Rachmaninoff, you may recall we had a whole discussion, and a very interesting one, of the addition of the single timpani stroke on the very last note of the first movement of Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony. That's something that drives me crazy, because Rachmaninoff didn't write it, he didn't want it, and to add a timpani bonk there misses the entire point of the piece, which is, it's not really the most important part of the ending of the movement. The most important part of the ending of the movement is the note before, for the full orchestra. Dun, 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 dun. Whoomph. And that whoomph, it's just a period at the end of the sentence. It's a wonderful musical detail, I think. I love it. I love the way Rachmaninoff wrote it. It shows such sensitivity and such a keen awareness of musical punctuation, and so I like to hear it that way. But some of my favorite performances have a nice, healthy timpani thwack at the end, and I hear it and I just go, what can you do? Because the rest of it's wonderful. And I'm certainly not going to get crazy about the getting rid of the entire performance or screeching about how insane it is just because of that one moment. And people do. I mean, people did when we talked about it. People have very, very strong opinions, but those opinions shouldn't rise to the level of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. You don't want to forget about everything else in the movement. I'll give you another example. I've got billions of examples. We could do this forever. George Sell's Mahler Fourth, which some people swear by, and which I've never particularly liked. For a variety of reasons. I think it's a rather cold interpretation, and especially in the first movement, it lapses into sort of a metronomical, mechanical kind of feeling. But that's me. I know other people love it, and I admire and respect. I mean, Sell is Sell. I mean, he does incredible things with texture and transparency and all that, all the Zellish things. But at the climax of the first movement, which is, dum ba da 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 dum ba 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 da ba da 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 da, and then it goes wrong, right? It gets that horrible screech of the trumpets, yeah, da 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 da. The sleigh bells come in, jingle, 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 jingle. Okay. Underneath that whole passage, and it's a long passage, is a tam-tam part. And I love my tam-tam parts. Why do I love my tam-tam parts? Well, the reason I always love my tam-tam parts, aside from being a percussionist, and a really bad one, and one for whom whacking the thing on the right moment was about as much as I could ever hope to achieve as an orchestral performer, underneath that whole part is a series of mezzo forte tam-tam strokes. It's da-da-da-da-da, crash, da, choom, ba-da-da-da-da, crash, crash, da-da-da-da-da-da, crash, 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 da-da-da, crash, da, crash, da-da-da, crash. Half notes. And it's in like 4/4. So it's, it's choom, choom, choom. And you almost never hear it. Very, very few performances actually let you hear what's going on down there in the percussion. And you should. It's mezzo forte. It's not such a loud texture. And it rises to a big fortissimo crash at the climax with the bass drum underneath it and all that. I mean, it really ought to be shattering. And the fact of the matter is that a tam-tam is, hit fortissimo is the loudest thing an orchestra can do. And there is never a reason not to hear that. Well, in the Sell recording, you don't hear it at all. You don't hear anything. You don't hear the mezzo fortes. You don't hear the loud fortissimo crash. It's just not there. And that made me crazy when I first heard that performance. It really did. One place where you do hear it is Reiner's. So if you have Reiner's Mahler Fourth, listen to that passage, and you'll hear exactly what Mahler wrote. Really with extraordinary clarity. It's one of the best that way. That said, I'm not entirely a fan of Reiner's performance either, for various other reasons. But the point I want to make is that initially that really put me off Sell's recording. I'm never going to like it for the other reasons I don't like it, but I don't care so much about the tam-tam anymore because, well, most performances blow it, first of all. I mean, it's really kind of astonishing how many conductors just seem not to care. Well, one thing I learned in playing in orchestras, conductors don't like noise. They don't. For some reason, they just don't. They just don't want to hear anything that just obliterates everybody else. But that's what should happen. That's what Mahler wrote. And if you respect the composer, you should do what they ask you to do. But you can't. It's 60 seconds out of a 50 some odd minute piece. And if everything else is going beautiful, the Sell recording has Judith Blagan singing the finale. She's great. It's a magnificent performance of the finale. The performance gets better as it goes. Actually, the Adagio is very, very beautiful. So Over time, I've mellowed when it comes to that particular aspect and that particular passage. Bernstein also gets it right, by the way. You can make yourself crazy over these things. Sometimes looking at the score is a bad idea because not everything that's written in a score is supposed to be heard or should be heard on an equivalent basis as the thing that you do hear, like the tune. There are a lot of interpreters who get lost that way. They bring out inner voices and mess with dynamics and do all kinds of foolish things. Just listen to those modern recordings of Haydn string quartets by horrible quasi-period instrument string quartet people. I mean, where they're always mucking around with everything because they think, oh, that's what players did then. They improvised, they did stuff. And they just lose the big picture. You see that constantly. They're nitpicking every note sometimes to the point where you totally lose the larger picture. And so that's what I want to emphasize, with all these little examples and things, which is that, an interpretation is a whole work. And these big complex pieces, they're constantly fresh, constantly interesting, always worth revisiting. And you'll always have your favorite moments. We all do. We all do. And I mean, I do, of course. And when I do reviews, as often as not, one of the things that I probably should make clearer, but don't, is, I pick out moments to talk about, and then I judge the whole performance. But when I do that, I'm not trying to judge the performance for good or ill based just on those moments. Those are examples of what I think goes well or what I think goes wrong. But before I dismiss a performance, those examples have to be indicative of the performance as a whole, not just a case of something that I like that doesn't go the way I like it to go, individually, in isolation. None of it is in isolation. And you shouldn't be listening in isolation. I mean, once you get to know a piece really, really well, you're going to find that you'll appreciate this larger scale, the larger picture, how all of the parts work together to form a whole. And incidental detail will still be important. Of course it will be. It always will be. And those special moments that just hit you in the gut, those will always be special. And performances that don't hit them are going to really annoy you. I'll give you one last example. Schubert's late C minor piano sonata. It has the most beautiful second subject. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. It's like little scales going up and down. And in the middle of it, da 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 da. There's a key change. There's a harmonic thing. Da 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 da. That's the moment. I mean, for my singing, you'll never get it, but it's there, and hitting that moment really matters to me, and it's a function of timing. It really is. The performer has to time the arrival of that magical chord so that it transports us to another realm when it happens. And it's also a question of touch and dynamics. And I always like the late Schubert performances by Mitsuko Uchida. And she totally blows that moment, in my view, because of her timing. I think her timing's off. She might not think so. She might think her timing's perfect. For me, it's off. And I prefer other performances for that moment more. Maybe not the rest of the sonata, but for that moment. And I don't despair of her Schubert because she doesn't hit that moment the way I want her to hit that moment. I am disappointed, but I am not absolutely determined to savage her performance of the C minor sonata because she misses that single moment. I was at one point. I may have done it in print for all I remember, but I'm much more indulgent now, and I'm happy for that because life is too short to get totally fixated on these tiny details at the expense of the wonder, which is the complete work. And not only that, if you know how you like it, and if you know how you think it's supposed to go, and the performance you're listening to doesn't do that, but does everything else really well, then why not give them a pass? Just substitute in your brain what you think ought to happen and enjoy the rest. Those are my little tips on critical listening today. Just observations from a life of listening to music that I hope will help you not have to wait 30 or 40 or 50 years before you can enjoy wonderful performances that you previously may have dismissed because of the single point or couple of points that you find essential in any performance of the work. Nothing is, essential. I mean, it's all a question of context and perspective and your own knowledge. And as you become more secure in your knowledge of the piece, I think you get a lot of satisfaction just from gaining additional understanding in what the performers are doing and how the interpretation is operating, even when it isn't going exactly as you want it to go. It's knowledge of the work itself that allows you to find, triangulate your position in the like-dislike spectrum whenever you hear a new performance of it. And remember, as I said at the beginning, composers are usually much smarter than their interpreters, so you have to give them a chance. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.